No one ever bothers to ask how a story actually begins. They just pick the most dramatic moment and decide that's the truth. From the outside, it looked like a circus built entirely around me. Two women with spotless reputations, absurd influence, and faces that never left society pages had supposedly grounded a private jet just to make a point. Every headline framed it like a romantic standoff, as if my life were some serialized drama written for public consumption. People speculated with confidence, like they were insiders instead of strangers refreshing their feeds. Childhood bond versus unexpected newcomer. Loyalty versus excitement. Some even joked that the solution was obvious. We should all stop pretending and just form some kind of modern fairy tale trio. Then reality cut straight through the fantasy. The photos that dropped that afternoon didn't show longing glances in my direction or rivalry between the two women. They showed unity, care, coordination. Cameras caught them escorting a young man I'd never seen before down the plane steps, each one focused entirely on him, hands steadying his arms, expressions soft in a way they'd never been with me. That was when the narrative cracked. Almost simultaneously, I made my own move. No statement, no press release, just a single image uploaded to my profile, a wedding invitation, one name tagged, Ethan. The caption wasn't poetic or dramatic. It was blunt, a line drawn in digital stone, telling the world to stop writing fiction about my life. The response was immediate chaos. People started digging the way they always do, convinced there had to be a hidden scandal buried somewhere. What they found only made things stranger. Ethan's online presence told a story that didn't include me at all. Over the last year, he'd been everywhere with them: restaurants, weekend getaways, sports events. He appeared comfortable, familiar, like he belonged. At a charity event I personally funded, he stood between them as if that position had always been his. Comment sections spiraled into confusion. Weren't those two supposed to be rivals? Didn't everyone swear they hated each other? When did this guy enter the picture? And why had no one noticed him before? That last question hit harder than the rest. Because I noticed him. Long before anyone online learned his name, I knew exactly who he was. I remembered the day he arrived at my house, like it was etched into the walls. He was a teenager then, thin, quiet, clothes worn soft from overuse. He stood just behind his father, eyes down, posture stiff with the kind of politeness that comes from knowing you don't belong somewhere. His father explained the flooding, the loss, the desperation. I didn't think twice. I said yes. At first, everything felt simple. I gave him stability, space, opportunities when assumed he'd never have access to otherwise. Education, exposure, inclusion. I thought generosity automatically created distance, that gratitude would keep roles clear. I was wrong. Somewhere along the way, invitations stopped feeling like favors and started feeling like habits. Conversations shifted when I entered a room. Laughter lingered after I left. Plans were made that didn't include me, and no one bothered to explain why. I told myself I was imagining it, that I was busy, distracted, overthinking. But you always feel the moment when you stop being central in your own story. I just didn't realize how completely I'd been replaced until the world noticed it before I did. All you can do is laugh, because anger would require believing they didn't know exactly what they were doing. Piece by piece, my world had been quietly stripped down, and I was the last one to notice the theft. My watch collection shrinking wasn't about the watches. It was about access, about entitlement, about someone testing how far they could go without consequence. And when I finally decided enough was enough, I expected clarity, accountability. Instead, I was cast as a monster in a story I didn't even know I was starring in. Anytime I raised my voice, they lowered theirs. Anytime I pointed out facts, they drowned them in sympathy. They spoke in rehearsed unison, like they'd practiced the lines without me. I was privileged. I was dramatic. I was selfish for noticing what I was losing. Apparently, generosity meant silence, and boundaries were proof of cruelty. The excuses never changed, only the confidence behind them. The moment that should have opened my eyes came wrapped in cake and candles. My own birthday turned into a celebration for someone else, because it was close enough. I remember standing there, smiling for photos, listening to strangers sing to a name that wasn't mine, and realizing no one even thought to ask how I felt about it. That was the first time I understood how replaceable I had become. Still, I stayed. I told myself loyalty meant endurance, that history mattered, that people don't just walk away from years of shared memories. Then came the mountain. What was supposed to be a casual trip turned into chaos when the weather flipped without warning. Visibility dropped. Panic spread. And in the scramble, choices were made. They chose him. They always chose him. I was left alone with the storm in my own failing body, wondering if this was really how it ended. Forgotten on a trail I never wanted to be on in the first place. I survived, barely. The aftermath was louder than the storm itself. My parents acted swiftly, decisively, the way people do when fear turns into fury. Doors closed. Arrangements were undone. And suddenly, I was the villain again, not for being abandoned, but for refusing to pretend it hadn't happened. They came to see me while I was still hooked to monitors, their anger sharper than any pain I felt. They didn't ask how close I'd come to dying. They didn't apologize. They demanded I undo it all, like my life was a minor inconvenience in someone else's tragedy. Listening to them, I realized something terrifyingly simple. They weren't confused. They had chosen their side long ago. When I blocked them, it wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, final. What followed was silence, on my end. On his end, it was performance. Apologies delivered like speeches. Tears timed perfectly. Promises stacked on promises. He played the role of the grateful outsider flawlessly, right down to kneeling on cold concrete and swearing loyalty he had no intention of keeping. The plane ticket he sent me back then was meant to close the chapter. Proof he was leaving. Proof he understood his place. I believed him, because believing was easier than admitting I'd been manipulated from the start. And now, staring at that same ticket blasted across social media with a caption designed to frame him as a martyr, it finally clicked. This wasn't guilt. It was strategy. He didn't sacrifice himself to spare anyone's feelings. He exposed everything on purpose, knowing exactly how the internet would respond, knowing how narratives are shaped, how sympathy is weaponized, how easily truth can be buried under a well-timed sob story. I set my phone down and took a breath, because this time I wasn't speechless. This time, I was done letting other people tell my story. Can do is laugh. That night, my phone vibrated nonstop against the table, like it was trying to crawl away from me. I finally glanced down and saw a familiar name at the top of the screen. The hiking club, group chat, a place that had been silent for months, was suddenly alive again. I scrolled. Chloe had added Ethan to the group. Maya followed immediately, flooding the chat with digital cash packets, one after another, like fireworks. Messages stacked on top of each other. Enthusiasm bordering on obsession. He's not officially a member, but we're all at the same university anyway. From now on, he's coming to everything. I'll cover his share. Someone questioned it, half joking. Does he really need you to pay? Maya responded instantly. I invited him. Of course I'll take care of him. Chloe jumped in, mirroring her move with another wave of money transfers. No hesitation. No discussion. That chat wasn't just a casual group. It was exclusive by design. Everyone in it had money, influence, or both. Ethan had only tagged long before, because he was with me, wearing my spare gear, borrowing what he didn't have. He was never meant to be inside that circle on his own. But now, fueled by their attention, the rules didn't seem to matter anymore. Then someone else typed a message that cut straight through the noise. So, you two have Ethan covered. Who's looking out for Julian? My name was tagged. The chat froze. No more money. No replies. No emojis pretending everything was fine. After a long pause, a voice message appeared. Ethan's voice, soft, careful, almost gentle. It's okay, everyone, he said. Whoever Julian chooses. I'll talk to the other one. I'm flexible. I'll take whoever's left. Then he tagged both of them. The silence that followed was heavier than any argument. A second later, a system message popped up. Julian Thorne has left the group. I set the phone down without another thought. Hiking was never just a hobby to me. It was survival. My health had always been fragile, and movement was something I had to earn. At the beginning, I couldn't even finish the easier trails. They'd take turns pulling me up inclines, clapping, joking, refusing to let me quit. When the scenery started to blur together, they planned trips to stranger places, tougher climbs, new landscapes. We traveled far, collected stories, and documented everything. We even created a shared cloud album, years of memories stacked into digital folders. I opened it that night. There were hundreds of gigabytes inside. Mud-covered smiles, blisters, sunburns, moments where we were lost and scared and laughing anyway. Proof that what we had once mattered. And yet, staring at it all, I felt nothing but distance. I selected everything. Delete. No backup. No hesitation. The next day, they showed up at my house together, anger barely contained. Why did you erase everything? Chloe demanded. Are you seriously cutting us off like this? I looked at them and felt strangely calm. I didn't need it anymore. It was taking up space. They both froze. Those photos weren't random snapshots. I'd uploaded every one myself, restored damaged files, preserved moments they'd forgotten even existed. And now, I was acting like none of it mattered. Chloe tried to soften first. We were upset last time, okay? But you saw how bad things were. We couldn't just abandon him. Maya snapped back before I could reply. Why are you still pretending he's innocent? If you hadn't pushed him, he wouldn't have tried to leave. This is just him acting out. She was flushed, emotional, always the first to explode. Chloe stayed quiet, but the disappointment in her eyes was unmistakable. She finally spoke, slower this time. Julian, you're both men. And in that moment I understood. To them, my pain was negotiable. My place was replaceable. And my silence had been mistaken for consent. That was the exact moment I knew there was nothing left to save. Targeting him? I repeated, honestly stunned. When did I ever do that? Maya laughed like I just told a bad joke. She listed my so-called crimes one by one. Posting online, leaving the group chat, refusing to play along. In her mind, all of it pointed to the same conclusion. I was deliberately painting Ethan as a villain. You're making everyone think he ruined us, she snapped. Isn't that what this is? That was when it finally clicked. To them, the wedding invitation wasn't real. It was just another performance. A move in a game they thought I was still playing. Listening to them talk, I remembered all the old jokes our families used to make at dinners, how I'd eventually have to choose one of them, how it was practically destiny. Back then, I'd laugh it off. Now I realize how seriously they'd taken it. In their eyes, I'd never been a person. I was a prize. And when they shifted their attention to someone else, they expected me to fight for it. I didn't have the energy anymore. If that's what you believe, I said calmly, there's nothing I can say to change it. I turned and asked the house staff to see them out. That was when panic finally broke through their confidence. Chloe reached for me, gripping my arm like she was afraid I'd disappear as she let go. We've known each other our whole lives, she said quickly. Ethan isn't replacing you. He's just joining us. Why can't you accept that? She went on about how alone he was, how difficult his life had been, how unfair it was to compare him to someone like me. Her voice shook with emotion, but all I felt was exhaustion. I'd never tried to control who they befriended. I'd introduced them to plenty of people over the years. The difference was simple. Those people never came between us. They never turned my words into weapons. And they never left me behind when it mattered most. I pulled my arm free. No, I said, my voice steady. The three of you belong together. For a second, neither of them moved. Then both their phones rang at once. They answered instantly. Ethan's voice came through, fragile and urgent, complaining about a minor injury, asking them to come back right away. They didn't hesitate. They were already halfway out the door before the call ended. They never noticed the decorations near the entrance, the folders on the table, the quiet evidence of a future that didn't include them. Later that night, Ethan posted again, a carefully framed photo, two familiar figures busy in a kitchen, a close-up of his bandaged finger, a caption that painted him as considerate, selfless, adored. The comments ate it up. One reply tried to cut through the act, calling him out for pretending to be something he wasn't. Ethan responded sweetly, publicly, tagging my name as if to suggest I was behind the cruelty. I smiled, closed the app, and went back to planning my wedding. A few days later, I went to get fitted for my suit. Ben came with me, still visibly irritated. On the drive, he finally asked a question that had been bothering him. "Are you sure about this?" he said. "Marriage isn't something you rush into just to prove a point." I looked out the window and shook my head. "This isn't about them," I said. "It's about choosing a life where I don't have to compete for my own place." "Think it through," I said with a faint smile. And I meant it. I didn't deny it. I had cared about them once, deeply. If things had stayed the same, if nothing had disturbed the balance we lived in for years, I might have chosen one of them without hesitation. But that illusion shattered the moment Ethan entered our lives. Watching how easily their affection shifted showed me something I'd refused to see before. What I thought was irreplaceable wasn't rare at all. Their warmth, their loyalty, the way they once made me feel chosen. It could all be transferred to someone new without a second thought. They weren't my world, and I was done pretending they were. Ben seemed to understand. His shoulders loosened, and he let out a quiet breath, slinging an arm around me as we walked into the boutique. That calm lasted exactly 3 seconds. The suit, the one designed specifically for me, ordered months in advance, tailored down to the smallest detail. That suit was on Ethan's body. Chloe and Maya flanked him like proud curators, adjusting the lapels, praising how perfect he looked, their eyes shining as if they discovered something priceless. The scene felt surreal, like I'd walked into the wrong room of someone else's life. Ben didn't hesitate. He stormed forward, grabbed Ethan by the tie, and yanked him close. "You don't get tired of taking things that don't belong to you, do you?" he shouted. "Now you're wearing Julian's suit? You think you deserve that?" Ethan cried out, startled and frightened. Instantly, Chloe and Maya reacted, shoving Ben away, pulling Ethan behind them, their concern fierce and instinctive. "Are you insane?" one of them snapped. "He's never worn anything like this before." The other added, "He just wanted to try it on. It's clothing, not sacred ground." They turned on me next, voices sharp and righteous, accusing me of being petty, selfish, unforgiving. According to them, Ethan had already moved on, and I was the one refusing to grow up. Ben stood there shaking, stunned by the sheer audacity of it all. I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I just looked at the suit. The waist had been altered. The collar no longer sat right. There was a visible scuff on the fabric near the hem. The piece I'd poured time, thought, and intention into was no longer mine. Not really. And in that moment, I knew I didn't want it back. Ethan peeked out from behind them and approached me slowly, guilt painted carefully across his face. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I've never even seen something this nice before. I didn't want to wear it, but they said you wouldn't mind. They really wanted to see me in it." His voice cracked, his eyes shone, and then he reached for my hand. I stepped back. He fell. It happened so fast it looked deliberate. "Ethan!" they screamed together. Before I could react, I was shoved aside. Pain exploded through my shoulder as I slammed into a hard surface, the impact knocking the air from my lungs. I couldn't even catch my breath before they were already crouched over him, checking him, comforting him, shielding him. Then they turned on me. "It's just a suit," one yelled. "You have dozens," the other added. "Why can't you give one to him? His life is already miserable." They blamed me for everything. For his father, for his finances, for his struggles. They told me luck had made me cruel. That privilege had turned me into a bully. I felt someone grab my arm. Pain shot through me again, sharp enough to blur my vision. "Let go," I hissed, instinctively lashing out. Ben rushed forward, but that only made things worse. The grip tightened, fingers digging in, determined to force me into submission, into apology. Sweat soaked my collar. My chest burned. I couldn't even form words anymore. And through it all, another voice chimed in, disappointed, condemning, certain of my guilt. Standing there, overwhelmed by pain and accusation, I finally understood something with absolute clarity. No matter what happened to me, no matter how far they went, I would always be wrong, as long as Ethan stood between us. Invitation, then the suit. In Maya's mind, It was all part of some elaborate performance, a phase I was supposed to grow out of. That was why she felt perfectly justified letting Ethan wear something that was never meant for him, altering it without asking. Treating my choices like props in her story. My arm throbbed. My chest ached worse. The pressure on my wrist tightened, and just as the edges of my vision began to blur, it disappeared. Someone stepped between us. "You got a lot of nerve," a calm, icy voice said, cutting through the chaos. "Ganging up on my fiancé when I'm not here." I looked up, and there she was, Eleanor. The moment I saw her, the noise faded, the pain dulled. That familiar, grounding sense of safety settled over me like a shield. She stood tall and composed, her presence alone shifting the balance of the room. She wasn't just the woman I was going to marry. She was also Chloe's aunt. The shock on their faces mirrored exactly how I felt the first time my parents arranged for Eleanor and me to meet. She was older, accomplished, and intimidating in the way only truly capable people are, while we've been fumbling through childhood. She'd been winning national competitions, signing sponsorships, moving in circles that felt impossibly far away. Our lives had never been meant to intersect, and yet, when they did, everything fit. Eleanor wasn't constantly hovering. She didn't indulge me or blindly side with me, but she was steady, thoughtful, present in the ways that actually mattered. She remembered things others forgot, adjusted plans without being asked, challenged me when I was wrong, and protected me when I wasn't. Like now, her eyes swept across the room, cool and sharp, pausing on Chloe and Maya before settling on Ethan. One glance at the suit, one slight frown, and the air shifted. Chloe and Maya finally seemed to understand what was happening. Confusion turned into panic. Reality crashed in all at once. Maya was the first to react. "You're serious?" she blurted out, anger and disbelief tangled together. "You're actually marrying her?" Chloe didn't speak. She just stared, stunned, as if the ground beneath her had cracked open. Ethan looked between us, clearly struggling to recalibrate. Then he opened his mouth. "So, you're really getting married?" he said carefully. "I thought it was just for show. I mean, everyone knows how close you are with them." He stopped abruptly, but the damage was done. The implication hung there, ugly and deliberate. I saw it for what it was, a calculated attempt to poison the room. This time, even Chloe and Maya caught it. Their expressions tightened. For the first time, they didn't rush to his side. Realizing he'd misstepped, Ethan immediately switched tactics. Apologies, tears, the familiar routine. He offered to remove the suit, shrinking in on himself, waiting for someone, anyone, to rescue him. No one did. I didn't look at him again. Instead, I called the shop owner over. "The suit's been altered and damaged," I said evenly. "I won't be taking it." I named the cost without raising my voice. Then I turned, took Eleanor's arm, and walked out with her, leaving every unfinished argument, every broken assumption, and every misplaced loyalty behind. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I was walking away from something. I felt like I was finally walking forward. "I'm sorry," I said softly once we were outside. "This ended up ruining your entire day." Eleanor shook her head. Her expression stayed calm, but her tone carried weight. "I should be apologizing to you. You've been handling most of the wedding details alone, and then you still had to deal with all of this." She glanced back once. Chloe and Maya were still standing there, frozen in place. Their faces were a messy blend of disbelief, anger, regret, and something that looked a lot like loss. I didn't feel anything about it. Whatever they were feeling no longer belonged to me. As the wedding date drew closer, Eleanor's schedule became overwhelming. Meetings, calls, documents. Her days blurred together. I stepped in without complaint and took over the remaining preparations. For the first time in a long while, everything in my life felt orderly. Then Chloe and Maya lost control. They sent requests on every platform imaginable. Unknown numbers flooded my phone. Maya went a step further. She started parking outside my house, waiting. Every time I passed her, she said the same thing, like it was a spell she believed would work if repeated enough. "You can't marry her." That was it. No explanation. No apology. My response never changed. "You're out of your mind." It was as if she'd been dragged back to a version of herself that existed before Ethan, bold, reckless, convinced the world would bend if she pushed hard enough. She made dramatic posts online, sent flowers, staged public gestures. The internet, of course, devoured it. Didn't she just switch sides? Is this a redemption arc or a meltdown? People mocked. She ignored them. Chloe, strangely, stayed quiet until the first time I attended a family dinner as Eleanor's fiancé. She found me near the terrace, blocking my path just as I was about to leave. I lost, she said quietly. She looked thinner, worn down in a way that wasn't physical alone. When I tried to step around her, she panicked and grabbed my sleeve. Ethan was never real, she blurted out. I just want to make you jealous. I wanted you to choose me. I never like him. I've only ever loved you. Her words poured out in a rush. Childhood memories, insecurities, fear of being replaced, fear of losing to Maya. She admitted it all, even pulling out a childish ring made of woven grass, something we once treated like a wedding band when we were kids. I'm not like her, she whispered. You were always the only one I wanted to marry. I didn't take the ring. I stepped back instead. When I spoke, my voice surprised even me with how cold it sounded. You and Maya are the same to me now. The color drained from her face. I won't pretend I never cared. I continued. There was a time when choosing between you felt impossible. I didn't want to hurt either of you. I let out a short, bitter laugh. But you both hurt me. I met her eyes without flinching. The moment you left me alone on that mountain, you stopped being part of my life. Everything else, Ethan, jealousy, games, doesn't matter anymore. I gently pushed the grass ring back into her hand. Promises made as children don't bind adults. She never came looking for me again. Maya did. As for Ethan, his online presence vanished after the boutique incident. No more posts. No more carefully staged photos. Once the attention dried up, he was discarded as easily as he'd been elevated. That didn't mean the damage disappeared. I never withdrew my demand for compensation. Not long after, I saw Ethan and Maya arguing outside my gate. His voice was frantic, desperate. I can't find Chloe, he said. Can you talk to him for me? That suit. I could work my entire life and still never afford to pay it back. I watched from a distance, expression unreadable. Some debts, I thought, aren't meant to be forgiven. Pay it back. He cried about how unfair it was, how someone like me would never understand what it meant to be poor, how I was bullying him just by asking for what I was owed. He even turned on Maya, accusing her of abandoning him, of promising things she hadn't delivered. Maya didn't even look at him anymore. She leaned against her car, lit a cigarette with shaking fingers, and avoided his grasp every time he tried to grab her sleeve. Finally, something in her snapped. Get away from me, she yelled. If you hadn't shown up, Julian wouldn't have shut us out. Ethan stared at her like he hadn't heard correctly. You told me to stay, he shouted back. You said you'd take care of me. You said you'd protect me. Spoil me. Treat me the way you always did. His voice cracked, raw and desperate. He couldn't accept the sudden coldness. To him, it was like being yanked out of a dream and thrown back into reality with no warning. I watched from a distance. They noticed me at the same time. The moment Maya saw me, she shoved Ethan aside so hard he hit the ground, then ran toward me in a panic. Julian, it's not my fault, she said quickly. He won't leave me alone. I was stupid before. I thought using him would make you jealous. That's all it was. The explanation was almost word for word the same as Chloe's. I didn't respond. She swore it was true, swore she'd never cared about him, swore she'd only wanted me. That was when Ethan broke. I don't know where he got the knife. One second he was crying. The next he was charging at me, eyes wild, face twisted with hatred. This is all because of you, he screamed. You ruined everything. Time slowed as the blade rushed toward me. There was no anger, no fear, just the absolute certainty that this was the end. Then someone slammed into me. Ethan went to prison. Maya went to the hospital. She had thrown herself in front of me without thinking. The knife destroyed her right kidney. After a night in intensive care, she was moved to a private room. When she woke up, the first thing she asked was to see me. After some thought, I agreed, When I entered the room, Chloe was already there, sitting beside the bed, peeling an apple with trembling hands. She looked exhausted, hollowed out. She stood up the moment she saw me. Maya tried to sit up, wincing in pain. I stopped a few steps away and spoke quietly. No matter what's happened between us, thank you. If you hadn't stepped in, I'd be the one lying here. I let the silence sit. Then I took out a wedding invitation and placed it gently on the bedside table. That was enough. Maya's face drained of color. Her lips shook as she stared at it, tears spilling over before she could stop them. "Can we go back?" she whispered. "Even if it's just the three of us. I don't care anymore. I really don't." She broke down completely. Chloe looked defeated, like someone who had already lost but still couldn't accept it. In that moment, they didn't look proud or fierce or desirable. They looked lost. After a long while, I sighed. This ending was inevitable. I said calmly, even without him, we would have fallen apart. No matter who I chose, the other would have been hurt. This way, we all get a chance at peace. I meant it. I had spent too many nights imagining futures where I chose one of them and lost the other forever. Those dreams always ended the same way. With regret, Ethan wasn't the cause. He was the catalyst. Seeing they wanted to argue again, I raised my hand and smiled faintly. "If you want," I said, "you're welcome to come to my wedding. Have a drink." My wedding. They came. They sat at the same table, quiet the entire night. Old classmates filled the seat around them, careful not to say the wrong thing. No one pushed them to drink. They drank anyway. And for the first time, I watched them from across the room. Not with longing, not with pain, but with distance, knowing I'd finally chosen the right ending for myself. Didn't cause a scene. As they leaned on each other and headed for the exit, they paused. I was standing there in my reception suit, Eleanor's arm secure around my waist. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They just looked at me, really looked. I met their eyes, lifted my glass slightly, and smiled. That was all. After the wedding, 2 messages arrived at the exact same time. From Chloe, wishing you happiness. From Maya, I'll wait for you forever. I didn't respond. Later that night, after I'd showered and walked back into the room, I noticed Eleanor sitting on the bed, my phone in her hand. Her expression was calm, unreadable. "What's wrong?" I asked, rubbing my hair dry with a towel as I sat beside her. I followed her gaze, saw the unopened messages, and laughed. "Don't tell me." I teased. "You're jealous." By then, we were close enough for jokes like that. She didn't scowl. She didn't bristle. She pulled me into her arms instead, her voice steady and self-assured. Too foolish. Immature girls aren't worth my jealousy. That only made me laugh harder. In the warm amber light, her features softened. The sharpness she carried during the day melted into something deeper, calmer, richer, shaped by experience rather than impulse. For some reason, I thought back to the day we first met. I'd gone in half defeated, barely trying. I hadn't even bothered to shave. I assumed nothing would come of it. Yet on the drive home, my mother told me Eleanor liked me and wanted to see me again. I'd asked her later why. Her answer had been simple. "I thought you were cute." Back then, I believed it without question. Now, staring into her dark, unreadable eyes, I narrowed mine playfully and pushed her back onto the bed. "Eleanor," I said, lowering my voice, "are you telling me this was all just spontaneous? Because I've heard a rumor from my dear mother-in-law. Apparently, your family has an old photo album filled with pictures of a little boy in overalls who looks suspiciously like me." I kept my face neutral. Her ears turned red. After a long pause, she spoke calmly. "Only foolish people create unnecessary drama. Smart people recognize an opportunity and take it." I lost it. I buried my face in her shoulder, laughing until my sides hurt. And the night was far from over. 5 years into our marriage, Eleanor gave birth to our daughter. At the 1-month celebration, Chloe held her the entire time, reluctant to hand her back. Maya arrived later with an absurdly generous gift. Our interactions were polite, distant, familiar in the way old acquaintances are. Likes on posts, brief conversations. Nothing more. Some things never fully heal. Maya never married. Over the years, she grew quieter, more measured. Chloe, on the other hand, drifted from relationship to relationship, never settling. Her family went from relieved concern to quietly resigned. At the party, we talked lightly about the past. Then Maya asked softly, if we hadn't been so foolish back then, would things have been different? She looked at me the same way she used to, but I was holding my daughter now, perfectly content. I answered honestly, probably not. She would have made her move sooner or later, and you two were never a match for her. Maya smiled faintly, as if she'd expected that answer all along. Years later, I heard her tell some of her side of the story. She said she'd first learned my name from overhearing a conversation at school. Someone had joked about skipping practice because Chloe was waiting for me. Maya said the way Chloe smiled when she said my name was what made her curious. Who was I, really? The truth is, timing matters. Choices matter more. And some doors, once closed, were never meant to be reopened. School was whispering about. So one day, driven by pure curiosity, I went with Chloe to the school gate. One look was all it took. I was finished Julian. He really was like a prince, effortlessly striking, confident without arrogance. He loved adventure, talked about the stars as if he belonged among them, and carried a warmth that drew people in without trying. It felt like I'd stumbled upon the muse of my soul. But the more time the three of us spent together, the more clearly I felt it. Chloe's hostility. Of course she liked Julian too. How could she not? They were childhood sweethearts, friends since they were 6. Compared to that history, I was the outsider, the intruder. The tension eventually exploded. Chloe and I had a terrible fight. So bad that we both ended up hospitalized, sharing the same room for 2 weeks. I still remember Julian sitting between our beds, his eyes red with fury. He shouted at me first, then at her, his voice shaking. Finally, he said that if either of us ever hurt ourselves like that again, he would cut ties with both of us forever. Strangely, that threat made me happy, because he yelled at me first. After that, Chloe and I reached a silent agreement. We wouldn't fight in front of Julian. In private, though, we were rivals. Everyone could see we both liked him. Julian knew it too. I could feel how carefully he tried to balance the three of us, how afraid he was of hurting either one. But I also understood the truth. This balance was temporary. One of us would eventually be left behind. I didn't want it to be me. Neither did Chloe. Without discussing it, we both made the same decision, to shatter that balance. We used the housekeeper's son, the outsider, to create the illusion that we were betraying Julian. We wanted to force his hand, make him choose. I never thought of it as cruelty. Julian was just too kind. The first time I saw Ethan, I knew he was calculating. And I wasn't wrong. Before long, he was trying every trick to charm us, subtly driving wedges between the three of us. Chloe and I went along with it. Then we went too far. What we never imagined was that, in Julian's heart, this was never a choose-one game. He disqualified us both. No matter what I did afterward, I could never win him back. All these years, I haven't been able to let go. I know Chloe hasn't either. Her string of boyfriends was just a way of lying to herself. I looked down on it, yet secretly hoped that if I held on long enough, I might still get another chance. That illusion lasted until I attended the party for Julian's daughter. I finally asked a question that had been buried in my heart for years. If I hadn't been so foolish back then, would things have been different? Would he have chosen me? He smiled, and he answered. In that moment, I finally understood. In Julian's heart, Chloe and I were never truly different. He might have felt something for us, but it was never enough to make him fall in love. Some feelings are shallow. Some chances only come once. And some destinies were never meant to intertwine, no matter how hard you wish otherwise.